So hi guys. So you're like, why is there an emergency meeting? What's going on? Very much rightfully so. So I have come around to awareness of what's going on many levels, and I am, 15 years in the making, sister of a huge conspiracy theorist, as well as someone who doesn't get swept up in hype and whatnot. As you know, I'm also an astrologer, and know that this year is the turning point and the tipping point, specifically this month when Mars reaches Capricorn with all the outer planets. And so it's happening very much right now. And it's happening as a multitude of things at once that we as individuals in our household might feel distanced from in one way or another, So yeah, let's start with my chant. I'll be able to share with you guys the chant that I do before the videos, before I record them to you, but I don't put it as part of the videos, but this time you get to see it. So we can all close our eyes and just feel into the belly and breathe from belly and wide through ribs, up through chest, and allow the exhale to fall. Be grateful for that breath. And check in if you're actually breathing wide or not, if you have the capacity to breathe down into the pelvis. Wide through the ribs, slight lift of the shoulder blades, chest. So I'll chant the mantra of learning and teaching. And you're welcome to chant with me at the end, 1 Om and 3 Shantis. Sahana bhavatu, Sahana vunaktu, Sahaviryam kharavavai, Tejasvinavadhitu mastu, Ma vidvishavahai. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Anything and everything that comes through you now be divinely guided, as it were, and be part of a bigger picture and a bigger paradigm. And may I be a vehicle in service. So the why of this call, and the why of the emergency nature of it, and the why of the now is obviously coronavirus, and largely what's happening on a bigger scale in the world. And so I started a moment ago telling you about the fact that, like, my brother's a huge conspiracy theorist, and I've been taught for 15 years to look at the what's behind the smoke and mirrors and the big show and whatnot. And there's a lot going on. Of course, astrologically, this was all forecasted, and so I'm not surprised. The emotional outcome of this is that I'm very pleased. Something is happening. If things were to stay the same, it would be quite rubbish actually. And so the fact that things are moving and shifting in the world, personally, as you know, someone who is a scientist, it's very clear that our planet and species specifically is overpopulated and does need a recalibration. And yesterday, one of my close friends called me a murderer because I'm traveling at a time like this, and I couldn't really get my head around it. And I was like, cool, I think we have different understandings of murder. And yet now I just sent her a message that I was doing this. She might hop on. She said, "You've come around," because I spent most of yesterday kind of delving into this research. So as you guys know, last week I was in Peru on an organic vegetable farm, pretty much off grid, really happy, you know, wonderful. And then I flew back into the US, silly enough, to spend the weekend at my friend's retreat center, also off grid, permaculture farm, like lovely. And it's only Monday when I get back to reality that I look at the rates of growth of the coronavirus over the weekend, and is pretty startling. I don't know how many of the graphs you guys have seen, but effectively, pretty much all of the graphs look more or less like this. Yeah, so you can see a huge spike right there. Huge spike, just massive curve. And so these kinds of curves are what I studied in my master's program on an epidemiological level. So on a level of understanding that in population, right, things are happening and it's like, oh yeah, your sister's uncle's cousin's brother had it. And then it becomes your sister's cousin's uncle. And then it becomes your sister's cousin. And then, wait, which would be your cousin? But then it becomes your sister, right? And at that point, when it's that close to home, we've risen in that curve. And TIFA at large, the Institute for Aliveness, is here to sit at that curve, right? I've been very upfront with you guys several times that my intention is to train you to become the doctors of the future. And so in my kind of post-career, as I've started to work in futurism, I've really let my mind go free. And so another big reason as to why we're holding this press conference is because the impact of this on a level of the future, from social things, from social isolation, to deep financial system things, right? The markets are already crashing. And like, this is not surprising, to be honest, when the Chinese supply chain, which has fueled everything for 20 years, is broken. You know, like there's going to be a massive awareness of the lack of sovereignty that most countries have. And so it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Vedic astrology, I get a Vedic astrology newsletter monthly as well as annually. And I had flagged and earmarked this past the night before last night at midnight as the date of the financial crash. And lo and behold, right, it was the biggest losings of the market in one day in the entire century. And so, and last century. It's a big deal, right? It's a big deal. This is the beginning of the end in a really good way, right? This is the beginning of the end of the system as we know it. Funny enough, a virus is something really easy to look at. In social dynamics of humans and sociology, the scapegoat is always needed. So if you look at World War II with the Nazis, right, it was the Jews or the gays. Or if we look at, right, any kind of, right, Sunni Shiite, it's the other. Right? We always need someone to blame or project. That is the nature of separation, of anything less than consciousness and higher evolution of consciousness that realizes that we're all oneness and that you are me and that what's happening out there is happening inside of me. And so in this facade or this game of reality that we've chosen to play together, right, we need an other. So the fact that we can make this other a virus that's sweeping the earth, you know, it's this wonderful smoke and mirror for several other things that are happening, whether they are divinely architected or architected by, you know, an elite group behind the US government. Like it doesn't matter. It's being architected, and everyone, including us, are just players in it. And so TIFA's role really clearly is going to be to separate the fear from the actual circumstance, but also allow this to be an ultimate platform for us to encourage self-sovereignty in people. You know, so I've just come back from a run, right? I got out of bed in the morning and I went for a run, because we are responsible every single day for our immune systems, right? And it's the choices we make through applied epigenetics that determine the resilience and the strength of our system or not. And so the more we can clearly communicate that to people and not have them wait for vaccines or whatever it is, like, people are starting to get it. When there is mass hysteria, as there is now, and will only get worse, because I mean, these numbers, guys, today, like, I know a lot of you are in Europe. Divya's here in Bali. Like in Bali, I talked to actually our respiratory system teacher 2 nights ago and recorded the class, which will air in a few weeks for you guys. That in Bali, it's like people are like, completely don't notice, which is actually interesting, because it is obviously an island that thrives off of tourism. But my guess is that there will be massive restrictions to travel at large in the very near future. We're looking at like a week in Europe. The rates have just absolutely escalated from 2 days ago to yesterday today. And the thing about coronavirus, and we can just talk about what it is, right? So bacterial infections are infections of the mind. Viral infections are infections of the emotions. If we're looking at psychosomatics, this is like baseline. So this is a bigger thing that's happening through the virus, right? We don't just believe in the epidemiology of it, and yet it is real. So when we look at a virus as it is, as biology understands it, which is only one lens to understand reality, yet it's a lens that's globally understood, and a lens in which other people will probably expect you to be speaking through. So I would advise you to first and foremost acknowledge that when you're speaking through it, acknowledge that you're speaking through it, and it's only one lens. Yeah, and we'll get more into this as we get into indigenous medicine, or actually on Friday you have a lesson that speaks a little bit about this. Nonetheless, in biology, a virus is a vector that needs a host cell to latch onto, and then it starts to reprogram the cell of the host cell. So as the story's been told of the great coronavirus, which, mind you, there was a Tintin book, you know Tintin, the cartoon character from France, those books. So there was a Tintin in, I think it was the 90s, where a big villain named coronavirus comes out, right? So we see like weird foreshadowing and things like this. Nonetheless, coronavirus as it is a series of viruses. It's a class of viruses that's been around before. We saw SARS in the mid-2000s. We saw the Middle Eastern respiratory virus right after 2010, 2011, 2012. And of course, this is the third. So if we look at the deadly nature, which is really just how many people die of the disease, this is way less deadly than SARS, and yet it's much easier to contract it because it is something that, you know, is breathed in. So if we rewind in time to like 3 weeks ago, or even a month ago, really a month ago, I was here in Florida. I came to see my parents for my birthday, and then I flew out. And at that time, I mean, it already started making news, you know, since really December. This has been a thing that's been talked about, but people haven't really paid attention, including myself. I was like, oh yeah, this biological warfare, that's what I was saying. And even when I spoke at the Anarchist conference in Mexico, in February. I called it biological warfare, which it still might be in a way, or it might be using biology to induce warfare, right? And small acknowledgement to the unexplained 30,000 soldiers, US soldiers that are currently being stationed in Europe. So Patrick, I would be interested to know if any of your friends or past colleagues, or if you know anything about that, because that's a big question mark. He's unmuted his mic.
From my understanding, in terms of, I know they've had the big shutdown in Italy. Nora has maybe a little bit better view, but I know the U.S. military has a big military installation in the city of Vicenza. It's where the 173rd Airborne Brigade is based, and I don't know, from my friends, the U.S. Army is acting like nothing's happening. Soldiers are still going in and out of Vicenza. I have not heard anything. I was stationed in Korea back in my time in the military. I've heard nothing. So with all the chaos that's been going on in South Korea, I have friends that are telling me it's like it's like nothing. Like they're just going about their day to day. Soldiers are coming in and out as usual. So
okay.
I'm not sure if that means there's something the government knows that they're not telling us, which is why. But there doesn't seem to be any kind of panic or anything coming from the armed forces from what I'm gathering.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So yeah, there's a lot that's happening, and as a futurist and leading this Futurist Institute, which you guys are all a part of, it's really our responsibility to think ahead of the game. Most people will sit and they'll just turn on the news and react and listen and kind of go about their daily life. But the fact of the matter is that this specific virus, it is airborne and incredibly easy to contract by virtue of that. And once you do, you have an incubation period of about 4 days, is the shortest I've heard, to 2 weeks potentially, where it incubates in the body before you know actually that something's going wrong. When it starts happening, you have a fever, like a low-grade fever. We're looking at 101, 102, and effectively upper respiratory tract failure. So this is something that when we're at the seat of this curve, that we're already on, it's already gone exponential, that spreads faster than you can understand. Things got real last night, even when I got a message from one of my close friends in San Francisco who said that her barista just tested positive for coronavirus. Now, if you can imagine, a barista, right, not only touches but breathes into things that people will ingest directly into their bodies. If you can imagine the amount of people from there where the local outbreak happens, it's real. And we've seen this in parts of Europe. Of course, in Wuhan, it was the spread, and the original vector came, it's being said, or the story goes, from bats, and that it was spread in an animal market to humans. And I wouldn't be like, it's so hard. I used to live in China, guys. Albeit almost 15 years ago, but like I used to walk to work through blood in the streets, like animal blood. And things in China are just like, hygiene isn't even a concept that's understood. So it would be no surprise that would happen. But then once it happens, this virus has to mutate enough times to be able to survive in a human body. Normally, animal viruses cannot survive in a human body. But as we know, right, in the world of both virus and bacteria and parasites, things are evolving at an ever rapid rate. And COVID-19, as it's called, the 19th strain of coronavirus, is one that has, won the lottery of viruses and been able to survive in humans. And so the good news is that coronavirus is nowhere nearly as deadly as SARS. As I said, it's about, let's say, 3 out of 10 would die versus way more. And those who contract the virus and get tested now, so the data that's coming in now, is largely likely in people with weakened immune systems. So in Wuhan, China, as well as in parts of Europe, it's winter, so it's flu season. And in Peru, I was with my friend who owns a giant medical diagnostics company. And he was like, he kept being naysaying, like, this isn't a big deal. Like, your friend who called you a murderer, that was before she called me that, but she's crazy and all of this stuff. But like, I'm a super rational person. And I focus on logic, and you know, this is what we've been waiting for, kind of thing. And it's super interesting that it's come to this, that this is the way that it's put forward. The fact of the matter is that the Western medical system is inept, right? They're experts at disease, but what they've become experts in is actually non-communicable disease, prolonging non-communicable disease. That's what the pharmaceutical industry, as well as the hospital industry, is really, really good at. And of course, preventative healthcare, it doesn't exist. Any money-making scheme around it would be in supplements, which will get a giant boost during this time. So if you guys are investing money, right, things like not colloidal silver, but coated silver is the one that I would recommend for a potent antiviral, as well as, you know, during our essential oils lecture, we talked about a bunch of antiviral substances, and we can go through them now. And I also want to talk to you guys about more or less the materia medica for the respiratory system, so that you understand herbs that can help us in times of need. And I also want to tell you a few things, like some misnomers. And there are some presentations that I want to go through, and then I can send you some links. But to be really clear, yeah, Tara, you want to say something? Sure.
I wanted to ask if you could throw MMS in there, which, you know, you probably have some experience with. I just want to know what you would think about that.
Yeah, so totally. I know your dad is a huge fan of it, and I don't personally actually have a lot of experience with many things like this. You know, for years, guys, like, I know that fasting and building immunity is all that's really needed. So I haven't had to reach into the pharmaceutical kit of the medicine cabinet that is actually herbal. And in times of need, I would just kind of go to essential oils for the past several years. Mineral supplements can be magical. For antiviral, I would like to see studies on it. I'm not sure. Or I would like people to test. And the magic of this is, guys, that by the time we have our next monthly call, I'm just looking at the date, right? It'll be about 3 weeks from now. Or a little bit more. Things will be very different, and you will actually have had testing ground. You will likely, for especially those of you in Europe, know someone with coronavirus or who's had it. And that it's not like an, oh my God, the world is dying kind of thing at all. It's much more a like, oh, okay, that person has to now stay in isolation. A close friend of mine who's a doctor in an Italian hospital was exposed to someone, and he's getting tested today, right? And if he tests positive, he will have to stay home in social isolation. And really the best advice is that everyone stay home from yesterday. And so this is obviously being enforced in places like Italy, and it was a bold move by Italy, but of course a move that, as it was said on here before, like, they said they did too late, and that is really leading the world in terms of Western countries being really honest about this. And when we look at internationally how countries are responding, China actually did exceedingly well. They were ahead of the game, and they knew how much they had to lose in terms of a supply chain, and they're still losing, but it actually spurred local industry. So if you guys know anything about the medical industrial complex is what we're in now, but the military industrial complex, as it was warned about mid last century, right? War creates lots of money. It makes an industry. It spurs demand. The same thing with this. And so on a consumer level, when someone is, you know, threatened with having to stay in their home, of course they're going to go and buy all the bottled water, all the hand sanitizer, all the masks, all the gloves, all the whatever, all the herbs that might help them because this is a time of need. And if they don't have it, right, or they don't have access to it in the future, they have to get it now, et cetera, et cetera. Nora's saying the US military is the biggest employer in the world. And so understanding for sure that this is there's a massive economic benefit to all of this, even though a lot, like the stock market effectively is plunging. So on the rollout of that individually, what that looks like is that this entire economic downturn, which of course everyone will just blame on the coronavirus, even though it's the system as it is collapsing, will also cause a major plunge in real estate markets. I'm not entirely sure yet what it will do to foreign exchange rates. That's something that obviously interests me much more. Hopefully it will allow for fintech and decentralized currencies, cryptocurrencies to rise as people start realizing that the old system and governments and centralization is not something that works in the world of digitization. And so in these rapid times of change that will continue throughout the year, of course, definite travel bans. And to be transparent with you guys, like I'm actually choosing to leave the US. This is not a place I want to be at a time like this. It's not somewhere I want to be stuck either. And B, gold, Patrick says gold. Yes, for sure. Gold's pretty high, but if it drops, like it's a great time to buy for sure. B, it is going to give massive, massive social isolation, which is pretty intense and dense. Because when you have this virus, you know, and it's so symbolic, it's all so symbolic. And so if we can stand back and just see the myth of it as we're in it, that's where we get our magic from, from the myth. And this virus, you know, which will spread amongst people, everyone's going to be doubting everyone else. The minute you hear someone cough or sniffle or whatever, there's going to be this cast of, you know, you immediately have fear-based thinking upon them. And the way that that's going to indicate local industry is huge, because you're not going to go out and get your hair done. You're not going to go out and get your coffee. You're not going to go out and even go to the grocery store or whatever it might be for fear of being exposed. And because of the incubation and the long isolation period, like it's about, you know, to be everywhere. So the fear of coughing is already happening. Totally. So it's only going to get worse for sure. And so the most responsible thing that anyone can do, especially your parents, especially if they have lower than normal immune systems or older or whatever, is stay home and not go out. This is on an industrial level going to really spur any kind of telecommunication companies. So it's great that we're involved in 2 online businesses, you know, that we can have conferences like this while you guys are all over the world and in the comfort of your homes. And it's really going to change industry. And it's you know, this is the opening point to the future. And so it's great news, and it's terrifying. And people are being kind of shaken by the shoulders and forced to think differently about the world that's coming. And so, yeah, so there's like all these threads here that I'm trying to unthread. The social isolation piece is a really, really, really big one, because what we're working with directly is humans who are already broken on the level of human dynamics, right? Completely then bathed or doused in fear. You know, so humans already don't know how to talk to each other, are already super anxious in interaction. And then, you know, this like, oh, what if that person has the virus comes in? And it's just like, it crumbles an already weakened communicative system. And so as we get into Mind semester, right, it can't happen soon enough. All of this is going to be super, super pertinent and super necessary. So yeah, I'm not giving you guys blatant advice. I'm hopefully just triggering you to think about certain things in new ways. And I would like this to be a thought collective. I would also love to start publishing things under TIFA's name that everyone helps to contribute to. And that can be as simple as, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say around that and our institute, but when we look at the respiratory tract, we have our lungs are muscles, right? So you guys had physiology last week, so you know very well that we have a responsibility not only for our structural muscle and its integrity and our ability to lift things or move places or not fall because we have a strong core. That's a really big one, right? But we also have a responsibility for our skeletal system. You know, when someone falls and breaks their collarbone, it's like, cool, did that person drink coffee and alcohol and eat meat? And thus every day they are leaching calcium from their bones and their bones are weaker, or they have osteoporosis, or are they having a super alkalizing diet and lifestyle that will strengthen their bones? This is about personal sovereignty and responsibility for what happens in our life. On the level of the respiratory tract, we have a responsibility to strengthen our lungs, right? Most unfortunately, my brother has used hot air in his lungs for most of the past 20 years, you know, and that has caused him to, at points in time, have emphysema-like symptoms. So, you know, there's a personal sovereignty level of responsibility that we are taking or we're not taking for our own health. And the good news is, yeah, that the body can and will heal itself if given the time and space to do so, right? So this is the foundation of natural hygiene, right? Naturopathy, everything that we're practicing here. And secondarily, that our body and all cells have the ability to self-repair if given the right conditions. And so strengthening a muscle is, you know, step 1, 2, 3. It's pretty easy. You work it out, you do it habitually, and you ask it to do difficult feats again and again, increasingly difficult, so it gets stronger over time. So this is just like a structural muscle. If you're going to lift a 1 pound weight today, a 3 pound weight tomorrow, and then next week go to 5 pounds or whatever it might be. Yeah. Well, same thing with the science of strengthening the lungs. Guess what? Yoga has had this science for millennia. It's called pranayama. It actually has much more to do with carbon dioxide retention in the body and thus triggering the body into a detoxification mechanism. So there's like a huge overarching theme here, which is the vaccine theme. It is the body's desire to balance itself out. And so we can see it in a number of different ways on the level of vaccines. What that is, it's just like homeopathy, where you're taking a trace bit of the toxin so that the body can develop, in the realm of viruses, antibodies, or in other immune realms, a defense against whatever you've put in, so that if the real thing ever comes in, the body will come. We have the same thing in Siddha medicine, which I'll talk to you about. It's burn therapy, where you expose heat to the body, so it triggers the body to think it's been burned, and it ignites a healing response. That is the same thing that fasting does. Do you guys see the logic here? Fasting triggers a starvation-like response where the body says, oh, fuck, I have to make sure that my immune system is boosted, right, to be able to heal. And that's why we get the best out of it. Yeah, it's not like fasting is this magic pill that I tend to publicize it as, but it's that same vector of the body balancing itself out. I've talked about this for many years. I call it the chapstick theory, where you put chapstick on, right? You put chapstick on 5 times a day, and then you need it even more. Tomorrow you have to put it on 10 times a day. And the reason that is, and it's the same thing with washing your hair and your scalp oils, is that your body will produce in accordance with what's there. This is physiology. Remember the air conditioning unit. So if you are dehydrated inside, your lips are dry, and then you put chapstick on, the body is not going to hydrate the lips, especially if you're dehydrated, because it doesn't have the water the excess water. And so you put on the chapstick, and the body's like, oh, okay, well, I don't have to do anything. That's coming from outside. So let me put on more chapstick and more chapstick and more chapstick. So you see this? It's all a big kind of teeter-totter balancing scheme, where the only way to get into balance is to cut off everything, whether that's medications or food, et cetera, and allow our body to find its own equilibrium, or chapstick. Yeah. And so I want you to understand vaccines to homeopathy to the chapstick effect, how the body is always trying to recalibrate. And the real kicker good news here is that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So someone you know will get coronavirus. Full stop. So immediately in that situation, right, rather than acting alarmist or reacting alarmistly, how you've been modeled to do, or how it's been really ingrained in you by dogmatic societal standards to freak out. It's like, oh, okay, cool, right? Celebrate our symptoms. Thank you. Wow. Definitely that person should be in isolation. You know, it's almost like an STD. You have to trace backwards to see everywhere they were exposed to, just like the barista with my friend's example. And at that moment in time, we have to be really clear to extract the fear and do it gracefully, not do it in a way that I've been doing it for the past 2 weeks where I've just been kind of laughing it off, but being really realistic and constantly asking the question of what's really going on here. What is actually going on here? You know, and we don't always know. We probably can't know because we're individuals. Perhaps no one even really knows. It's not, again, like something that's massively architected by some elite society. It is the larger scheme of Kali Yuga and this transitionary phase, and this year being the tipping point of it. And so trust is the best medicine that we can take, that whatever happens is meant to happen and that effectively it's okay. Responsibility, self-sovereignty, right? Having real domain over our own health, our own immune system, realizing that if we are exposed, because we're carrying viruses around with us at all times. I mean, you guys will get into this, how to see it in the eye in iridology during our diagnostics week coming up. But like just taking a breath and stepping back into that place of like, okay, yes, this is all meant to be. And yes, it's scary. And I don't want to go and spit fear. And my desire here with you, if I can be really clear, is not to spit fear, but it is a pressing issue. It is a futurist issue. It is something that the world is going to have to increasingly deal with. And it doesn't necessarily look like anything that's going to be solved soon. And so it's simply revealing to us the failing systems at large, whether they are governmental or medical, or financial, economic. And that's really exciting. And at the same time, how do we make sure that we are resilient in a time of economic downturn? Like, what are you guys doing, or what can you do on a local level to just make sure that you have economic sovereignty? And I know obviously with our TIFA tuitions, our second installment coming up, that those of you paying installments, like that's a real thing too. And so, the more that we start to shift into this online sphere, the better. I've mentioned to several of you Upwork.com. It's a freelancer website. And all of you speak English, right? At least well enough to be doing some kind of translation, whether that's from your native language to English or back and forth, or transcription, or whatever it is. There are companies that need people that you can just spend your few extra hours making some money. And that's not a bad idea, to think outside of the box on a level of resilience. And more than anything, it's a big cheer to call out your friends who have their own permaculture farm, you know, and find local food systems. Divya, it's upwork.com, upwork.com, who have local systems. Yeah, like for example, Divya, I would be super curious as to what's happening in a dentist's office right now, where everyone's, you know, mouth fluid is all over the place. And it's actually quite a good time for you to be on holiday. And let's see what happens by the end of your holiday. Like there's you know, nothing is a mistake, happens for a reason. It's all very fascinating, but thinking of resilience in a much more serious way right now, from your food to your water to, thank God you guys all have established fasting practices that you can always fall back onto in times of need. Yeah. Like this is the time to truly step up and up level in our own lives on the level of resilience and the responsibility of our nervous system, and then be able to gracefully communicate that to others, to extricate the fear, and to also offer secrets from the plant kingdom. So if we look at like top 10 respiratory herbs, we can group them into different categories. So the first category is any kind of herb that's going to stop you from coughing. These are called anticatarrhals. Catarrhal is a word for coughing, or that involuntary contraction of the muscles of the lungs in order for the body to expel something. And so these are things like elderflower, nettle leaves. And so these might be things in your backyard, especially if you're in Europe. Catnip, goldenrod, and these you don't have to go and buy them. If you are buying something, then buy a blend and make sure it doesn't have any fillers in it and it's made of organic herbs. The second category is things that are essentially immune system boosting, antiviral, and or dissuading the infection at large. And so the good news about this is garlic. As I told you guys, it's one of the strongest antivirals, right? If I was a hedge fund investor, right, I would invest major in garlic, but I don't think that unfortunately will go widespread. But in general, of course, garlic. Thank you, Amanda. Look at that sexy, sexy garlic. Long stem, purple, wild garlic. Yeah. So guys, we're talking about taking 2 of those teeny little pieces, maybe even big ones, chopping it up into 4 or 5 discs, yeah, each, and then taking those 10 discs with salad daily. Like, that is powerful, powerful antiviral potency. And that's like as easy as it gets, huh? And that's affordable to anyone, anywhere. So echinacea, you've known for a long time, is great. And it's all the leaf, the flower, and the seed for boosting immunity. And then thyme, right? So making thyme tea, thyme essential oil, etc. So our next classification is going to be anti-tissues. Oh, computer died. Let's see if I can get it up on here. How many days in a row can I eat raw garlic in my salad? Mom, would you be willing to get the charger from there? Computer charger from there. Many, many days. Do it for a month at least. If you want to sweep out a lot of the viral load in your body, for sure. I mean, you're going to smell. There are pills that are non-smelling pills, but nothing is as active as the real thing, allicin and garlic. And this is not cooking with garlic. It's definitely having it raw, because the allicin needs a good 10 minutes to be released and become fully active. So if you chop up your garlic and then you cook it right away, it's not active. I think I might have told you guys that during a class, but nonetheless, yeah, this is big. So I'm just seeing all of the previous messages. Bali just got its first death from the virus today. Oh, very interesting. So, wow. Yeah. Staying home. So warmer countries don't get it as much. Would you remove the green core of garlic, the one that makes you smell? So the green core is actually, I don't know, that's interesting, Nora. I've never heard that before, that that's what makes you smell, but what that is the stem. It's the sprout. And I would think it would be the allicin in the white part itself more so. Yeah. Okay, well, my computer's turning back on. Does anyone have any questions, or do you guys have any comments thus far? I know I've been dumping on you. Nada? Can you unmute?
Yeah, I have a question. I didn't want to get really involved in talking about this subject because of, bringing fear and everything. But we all are familiar that this year is a huge year energetically for everyone, everywhere. So I guess if you are really sharing about this with us, it's because you are kind of sure that this is kind of growing really big and too fast. So I respect that, and I respect everything that astrologers are also reading about this. So yeah, it's kind of giving me chills at the moment, because I didn't want to get involved, and I was like, I don't want to participate of it. I want to keep in my own bubble, but I don't know how I'm gonna find the balance between not freaking out and getting deep into it, and at the same time having my garlic every day on my bowl, and like not making it bigger in my head when I'm eating my stuff, like I don't know how much this is gonna affect the food I'm taking. So now I don't know if I should eat or if I should just fast 40 days in a row, like I'm getting really confused right now. Yeah, I don't know if there is a question or three there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's how I'm feeling right now.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And it's all super understandable and received. And you remember that email that I sent you last week, about a week ago? Yeah, that the process of anything is the education. And so just like the process of overwhelm of TIFA is the education, like there is no better practice for dealing with big things and having big things come. And so there are multiple strategies to deal with things like this in times of crisis. And one of those strategies is ignorance. Ignorance is definitely bliss. And like those people who have the luxury to truly disconnect, like if I were still in Peru off grid on the vegetable farm, really happy, just having everything I need right there, like that's definitely the way to go, but that's not real for me right now in my current reality. And so at the current level of reality that you're in a big city in Europe, you then face a different choice. Ignorance is no longer a choice, nor is not having an opinion. And that was something that I also played for the past 2 weeks, as I told you, like, oh no, okay, everyone's freaking out, like, don't worry, whatever. This is the tipping point. So it's not also, then a third strategy would be getting wrapped up in hysteria and fear and whatnot. And so always, as with anything else in life, am I coming from fear or am I coming from love? It's a simple choice. So it's going to be a super powerful self-monitoring device of greatly enhancing your self-awareness. And so each time, right, like in my run this morning, the reality of it is I'm in Florida, I'm in the place with perhaps the most weakened immune systems in the entire world. And so this is a place where, who knows, like if I'm carrying coronavirus, I don't want to give it to all the old people here, right? Because they're not going to be able to deal with it. I'll definitely be able to deal with it, but like, who knows? And so this morning on my run, like I just, I ran around people. I was not wanting to get anywhere near close to them or speak to them at all. And so where is this tipping point between social isolation, right? Where I'm also not wanting to get near them because like who knows about them, or I'm not wanting to perhaps spread anything with them because I've been on lots of airplanes in the past 2 months, So there's all of this, and there's just like responsible love and awareness. There's also a certain sense of realism where it's like, cool, the best thing we can do to stop this is to quarantine ourselves. And just like Nora's experiencing in Italy right now, quarantined, there's a massive ability to come back in and take inventory and to get on top of things and catch up with courses and, write that book that you haven't ever had time to write, to start that online career, whatever it might be. that there's always a silver lining. And then, yeah, I mean, it's also kind of usually excavating habits and patterns from your mother, right? Or your grandmother, or how your family has dealt in times of crisis, and what you've inherited from that, and start to re-scaffold your reactionary capabilities, and find a way to be balanced and calm and stable in a time of crisis. And that, more than anything, is the teachings. That's what yoga is, to stay calm among stress. And so it's all grist for the mill, as Ram Dass would say. It's all to be used for our growth and our evolution. And as I told you before, really the magic that we have and can keep is in staying connected to the myth. And the myth is this virus that's taking over the world. You know, it's a great story. And it's our human story. It's our collective story as a species right now. So effectively, the question is, how do we coexist at the level of collective unity and oneness and connection, right? And not being esoteric, just being like, all of this is none of it's real. And we'll get more into this in Mind and Spirit semester. And then this level of practicality and on the ground. And personally, I don't really want my parents to leave the house, So, and if they die tomorrow, am I okay? That's when I jump up to this upper level. And so this entire, like, being a human today and wearing this skin suit and having this feigned separation is constantly hopping between these two levels of reality. And it's the grace with which you hop or hopscotch between them that will decide your ease in life. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the conversation between your ears. And so that's the only one that you have control over. Yeah, Div.
So I'm just like feeling really like pragmatic about this, and I was just wondering, like, these kind of basic simple tips that you're like suggesting, are we going to publish this like somewhere?
Now she sees why we're coming together. Yes, 100%.
And also, like, my next thing was like, I guess some kind of online way of like working on the social isolation thing, like virtually or in other ways, like in some kind of way, like some platform or some ways of keeping engaged, because already, especially in the West, it's such a huge issue, and there's so much depression and loneliness. So yeah, some kind of tools and like, and maybe getting some infrastructure in place like now. Yeah. I mean, I don't have an option of not going to work at the moment, but it'll be interesting. Like the NHS, which is like, yeah, one of the biggest organisations in the world, has got, and I can see emails being pinging out. But it'll be interesting when I get back, because it wasn't. We only had these masks being given to us when I left. I don't know what it's like when we get back, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it's being dealt with in the health service. Yeah. And
and I mean, to be honest and frank, like, and real with you guys, with just like me knowing global shifts and changes in governments, and remember, way before this whole health career, I'm a political economist and I was studying diplomacy, and like I'm very much still in that mindset. It's not a when you get back, it's like a if you get back. Right? So like, you will get back someday, but will that be in the coming few months? Like, who knows? Travel bans and restrictions are very, very real, like moment to moment, from when we started this call to now. Things have already shifted and changed, and that's the exponential rise, where this just blows out of nowhere. And if you guys have been able to kind of ignore what's been happening, Monday and Tuesday of this week, today is Wednesday, already in Australia it's Thursday, things are happening and shifting and moving. And this is really the time where shit gets real. And so that playfulness that you can stay in is a gift as well. Of like, well, if I get back, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And like, if you guys haven't realized, like, this is how I live my life. And that is the absolute ability to detach from control, which is what leads to depression, thinking that we have, you know, power over things and ability to control things and things like that. So,
introducing. Oh, sorry.
Say again. Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying, like, if we had a fact like these sheets, I'd be up for giving them to my patients, like, and like, yeah, verbally or written, and
yeah. So yes, the ultimate outcome and my desire for this is not only to help you guys and your brains and perspectives and hearts to strengthen in immunity, right? Don't forget that the thymus gland, remember this, from our endocrine system, sits behind the heart, and that is the regulator of the immune system. And so there's a deep, deep, deep connection there to be able to be immune to what's happening, what's about to happen, and what's going to happen for you, your friends, your family, anyone you come into contact with. And how the Institute for Aliveness specifically, you know, we can keep making spins on our name, the Institute for Aliveness, like if you want to stay alive kind of thing, even though intentionally we are wanting to experience a higher level of aliveness than just survival. But yeah, totally, like, how can we collectively come together to put out information in this way that's fully body, mind, spirit, heart-centered, and also super practical and real, and have that be an initiative that offers to the general public. And Divya, I love what you said, and it gave me an idea of you know, social connection in times of crisis. You know, if it's just like have tea room hours, and this is what I do in the initiation. I pair people up and I have them sit on Skype for an hour and drink tea. You know, what could come out of that? What could come out of that if we gave them, you know, the 36 questions that you ask to make people fall in love with one another? How can this social isolation actually be a vehicle for greater teaching of communication skills, as well as connection between people, even in a digital space? Because if there's nothing else that I've observed over my lifetime of digitization, because we are of the generation of people who had, you know, devices in our hands from high school. Hi, Danny, welcome. That this, like, you know, this is such a reality. You guys remember AOL and instant messaging and like the early days of text, how you would be able to say anything as long as you were behind the safety of a screen, you know, and you would say things that you wouldn't say in person. And this can never be a replacement for person, but it can start to get people to speak and say the unsaid and to ask the real and hard questions. And so how is all of this working in our favor? And if we can just continuously ask that question, and by our favor, this is not a personal thing, this is not an ego-driven thing, this is like the bigger picture perspective of whatever the Institute for Aliveness is here to give to the world, and our, as in humanity's, favor. And that is the antidote to the fear, Amanda. So we left off at anti-tissues. I was going through this list of herbs for you, which I'll send you guys. But anti-tissues in general are a class. So we've gone through these different classes of upper respiratory or respiratory tract herbs, and anti-tissues are herbs that at large suppress coughing. And it really works with the brainstem. It's interesting. It's a different approach than the anti-catarrhals that we talked about in the beginning, which deals more with the lungs. But two of the most well-known anti-tissues are wild cherry bark, which is difficult to get. This is not like an easy herb at all, but it's usually made in syrup, and this is something that can help people sleep during coughing. And coal's foot as well, which is usually in a tincture. So is this helpful to you guys? Do you want me to keep going? We're almost done, but I want to make sure that, or you just want me to send you this list and we can publish it? Give me a nod if yes, we finish, or no.
Yeah, can you send it?
Yeah. Do you want me to go through the rest of it?
Yeah.
She's like, I don't know. Okay, so I think there's only four more categories. So the first one is demiculants, which are responsible for coating the lining of the respiratory tract and making everything really nice. And a lot of these herbs will find themselves in numerous categories. But these are also ones that we'll see for the lower digestive tract or even the upper digestive tract. So licorice root, as well as marshmallow. And expectorants is the next category. Expectorants are things that actually make you cough in order to stimulate the release of whatever that is inside that needs to be released, whether that is lymph byproduct or virus. So these are also, as with any herb, they're going to have multiple actions. The first one's mullein leaf, and mullein is also calmative, which is really beautiful. So it's going to have multiple effects upon someone in stress. L-campane is an expectorant as well as lobelia. And lobelia, funny enough, we use it to get people to stop smoking. So, you know, if we want to talk about another correlative factor, like anyone who's been a smoker is at major high risk, not only to contract the disease, but to die from it. And so, yeah, Nora.
Have you finished? I don't want to interrupt you though.
We have two more. Lymphatics. So lymphatics, red clover, and calendula, and that's dealing with the recycled lymph. And then the last two, respiratory immune tonics, astragalus, reishi, which of course we've heard from Paul about mushrooms, usnea, lichen, elderberry. So these are and this is a very European materia medica. So these are things that we've known. And then circulatory stimulants, which are going to help to get blood flow all over the body. Ginger. Right. So here's another one that you already have in your kitchen, and you can make it as tea or chew on it, and it will stimulate the system. And then actually our poultices or hot compresses with herbs in them will help. And then finally, and I'm finished, alkaloid-rich symptomatetics. And these are essentially just working with the nervous system and helping to open the airway at a time where it wants to close. And these are things that you know that are going to be huge stimulants upon the system, like chocolate or coffee or ephedra. And a natural one is bitter orange. And so if someone is going into that like respiratory super illness, the alkaloids from coffee actually will help them. And that's by virtue of that same kind of effect of the slight toxin coming in, and the body responds with this jumpstart. And that, like, it's not a pretty situation right now in Italian hospitals. I have two friends who are in the center of it, you know, they're essentially choosing who will be able to live by who gets the ventilator and respirator, because there aren't enough. And there aren't enough in the medical systems worldwide, especially in the US. And so, you know, that's kind of a they over there problem, but to know that there are some like emergency medical things that can be done on our turf, or if there's anyone we're around, or if we can give advice. So yeah. I'm done with the list. I'll send it to you guys when I send out this video. What were you going to say, Nora?
Yeah. So what I've been finding quite interesting is that no one really speaks about the fact that, I mean, the very basis of natural hygienism and our no arid mucusless diet is not the virus or the bacteria that is the issue, it's the fact that your body is a fertile soil for that virus and bacteria to actually grow in your body. And I mean, there's cases of people, like there was just a case of a guy, a 30-something-year-old man, having massive issues with coronavirus, and then his wife, who was pregnant even, who got it, didn't, like, she just had a flu, and then it was over. But it's interesting, because I used to be quite similar to Amanda in the past like few years. I like didn't really want to listen to the news, didn't really want to know anything that was going on. But then I realized that I kind of put myself into a bubble, and that's also, it just creates disconnection. At least in my life, it kind of created that. And because I was all into the news before, all into the critical analysis of the news and geopolitical situations, and I just had enough of it. But then going to the other extreme was an extreme indeed. And now I realize that just to kind of walk responsibly in life, I feel like it is important to know what's going on, but critically analyzing it, because I mean the situation here in Italy is bad. It's bad in the sense that you just look at numbers and you don't even have to like listen to the news, just check the numbers and the diagrams and whatever, and you can make your own opinion already depending on that. And the issues that the healthcare system is collapsing, and I mean that's the main issue. It's not the virus itself, it's the fact that it's the country is on its knees. But then economically it's creating like massive issues, and people were panicking. But what's been quite interesting as well now is that it's really creating a reset. And I feel at least like it's creating some sort of like balancing out, just like a fast. It's like taking it to the other extreme so that you can look at things from a different perspective and change your perception, as we know from Bruce Lipton. That's very important in how like we react to stress. I live in the middle of the forest where like I could just be completely ignorant about whatever is going on, except for the fact that now I can't go and see my friends, I can't go to my horses, I can't move around. And I could notice that psychologically that has a bit of an effect, because in some ways my life isn't changed almost at all, like maybe 10% of it, because I work online and yeah, I mean, I can go on my walks, I can do most of the things that I would normally do. But then psychologically, like the effect of knowing that you can't go somewhere is a bit like, oh my God, someone is putting like a fence around my life completely. And for me, that's crazy, because if you take away my freedom, that's when I get quite difficult and aggressive even. But I really notice, and everyone is actually saying this, is like it's really taking you to the now, to the here and now, because you can't make any plans, and it's so cool. I love it. It's like I can actually stay home and just focus on doing all the things that I want to do, and it's nice to be alone. And I mean, I started fasting just because I was seeing the people going crazy and feeling like they're going to die if they don't eat something for like a day, especially in Italy, you know, Italians and their food. But it's like, in some ways, I really feel like, and I hope that even if the economy collapses, that's great. This is a system that we don't want to support. So like, fuck it. Like, let's just see what happens. I mean, this is my view. And I've just learned in life that all crises and all worst moments can actually be the best moments in your life. So I hope that that's going to be the case for the whole planet in some ways. And I mean, yeah, carbon emissions are going down and so on. The only thing that I find interesting and that I think it's good to kind of keep in mind, and yeah, it's keeping like eyes open on what goes behind the scenes. What are they doing while we're just completely panicking and focusing just on the virus? As you know, Naomi Klein teaches, shock doctrine, just numbing you and like creating confusion so that they can just pull out policies and things that we wouldn't normally accept. And also I'm asking myself, are they like closing us off so that then little, like, I mean, going out will feel like something like a massive freedom act? Or are they like trying to, actually there's also conspiracy theories about the 5G, because they've been testing 5G in China and in Italy as well. So that's another interesting thing. Are they going to force us on taking vaccines after? Hopefully not. Yeah, there's a lot of questions out there, and I think just staying grounded is the best way of like moving forward ever. But I think in terms of health, like, I mean, even just starting a fast, quite a lot of people got interested in it. I publicized it on my social media, and I could notice that people were interested. It's like, you know, this is the time to do it. I'm at home. So I think we can do a lot of great things to help people. Thanks for listening. I actually have a question, sorry. What, astrologically speaking, what is it that has been kind of predicting what's going on? And can you give it, do you know what it's going to be like in the next few weeks, months?
Yeah, totally. So at a large societal scale, right, we have transits. So in astrology, there's, like, I have a circle behind me, so I'll pretend this is it. There's a map of the sky, and that's your natal chart. And you have a map of where the planets were at the moment of your birth. And then you have transits. So you have certain planets coming to certain parts, returning to certain parts of the sky where they were on the opposite side of the sky, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you have the climate, astrological climate, or the cosmological climate at any point in time, it's going to predict more or less what's happening to everyone at a large scale and what's happening in society, in global society on Earth, as we look at the sky above us. And what's happening this year is that all of the outer planets, the major outer planets, so Uranus, revolution, abrupt change. Saturn, shit getting real, shit hitting the fan, yeah, and some kind of form of confinement. Pluto, death and rebirth, compost, yeah. And then Jupiter, which just expands everything I just said, right? Kisses it all with the kiss of growth, are all convening and have been in Capricorn, the area of the sky that deals with patriarchy, institution, capitalism, this strategy, this structure on which we live, yeah. The old system at large. And then, so the alignment, and I mean, like, look at Tomb Raider Lara Croft stuff to hear about planetary alignments, but like, this shit's real. It is strongest in January, happened, March, now, July, and December of 2020. Now, in March, and it hasn't even begun, and that's why I'm telling you this is like the end of the beginning. Mars, the planet of war in a very kind of patrilineal sense, or the planet of activation in perhaps a more passive sense, is joining all of those outer planets. And I can look at today's, and Caroline, who you guys met, who's been a new joiner to our institute and who has been very vocal, and she ruffles feathers wherever she goes. She's stirring up our pot, which is amazing. She will also, she stays much more up to date on day-to-day astrology than I. But we have right now Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter at 29, 24, and 21 degrees of Capricorn, and they will keep going back and forth until they fully align on these specific dates. And Mars is at 16 degrees, so Mars is only just approaching. So over the next few weeks, it will get there to those late degrees of Capricorn. And so if anyone has planets in their chart at late degrees of Capricorn, and or late degrees of Cancer, which is the other side of the chart, or Aries, right, or late degrees of Libra, right, these are that would make it across. You'll either have a square or an opposition to all of this energy happening in the sky. And on a personal level in your life, you will feel strongly what's going on. And this is just, you know, it's the laws of the way things are. And it's not something to get scared about. It's not something to be like, oh, do I have that? It's just like, okay, cool. Like, this was scripted. And at the end of the day, the biggest medicine that we can take, the biggest vaccine that you can ever take is trust. Injecting yourself with a heck load of trust, of connection, to understanding that this is all happening for a bigger purpose, with a bigger reason, for our own benefit, and that we have each other. And at the end of the day, we have each other. Like, I don't know, like, I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate you, because you are literally my permission, effectively, to be able to leave my career, right? You are the future. And I don't want to be doing this stuff with people and talking about health and stuff like that. And so the fact that you'll be doing it is like massive excitement for me, to be able to go on and do Future of Cities and like bigger futurist stuff, that like, that's where I'm supposed to be. And so to have this collective, and more than anything, to also give the antidote to privatization, which is part of the system. And so privatization is, this is my IP, this is mine. Why would I ever want to publicize for you, or like do anything like that? And just have an institute and a collective which you guys own, you know, and it's us doing it together. Like, that is the future at the end of the day. And so everything is medicine, and the way in which we take the medicine is through a spoonful of trust. And so, yeah, just like constantly reminding that, or allowing that to be a mantra in our minds as shit starts to hit the fan, and this greater change happens, and all the while on the ground, on the battlefield, as it were. Not that this has to be a war, but that we are constantly strengthening our own immunity in a way where, yes, the really good news at the end of the day is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And so that's on a societal level, the coronavirus. That's on a personal level, your own human body, right? And that's on a level of like, those who survive will be survivors in a super powerful way. So God is calling. I definitely want to open, if you guys have any other questions. I'm almost through my third glass of water, so it's time to end. And I want to finish this with actual pranayama practices, because I want you to have these tactile practices. And we've done them little by little, but I just kind of want to give you a 10-minute daily pranayama technique and routine that you can do every day from here on forward. And funny enough, this was one of my New Year's resolutions this year, because on some level of consciousness, I must have known that there was a respiratory thing coming. But this is our daily lifting weights for the lungs. Yeah. So I'll open it up to questions if anyone has, before we begin a little bit of pranayama. Or any comments or anything you guys want to share.
Hi, I missed it, the beginning. So I just I believe you guys have been talking about coronavirus.
She's like, what are you talking about? Yes, Jenny.
What happened? Did anything happen? What did I miss?
You'll be able to watch the replay as soon as you go. Everything's okay. You are loved.
Okay. Yeah, no, I shared a link. I just come from the gym. I'm super sweaty. But I shared a link. It was it's like a fashion, or she's a predictor of trends, a trend predictor. And she mentioned that this is like a super blessing for the universe almost, because people are going back to basics. There's a huge, lower carbon footprint. We're making more use of like the local communities to rely on food and produce, and it's just planet Earth, like literally saying stop, and like, this is enough, I think.
How blessed. I love it. It's like, did we need something so strong to sweep through the entire global population, right? To reset us. Yeah. And that like plugged us back into trust. And so our power, really, because everything's about power dynamics, our power is to be able to reframe the conversation between people and within people. Yeah. And so what are the techniques that we'll use? And I would love to have breakout groups from here or to have this week's breakout group with you guys be like each group takes a certain sector. One can take communication, or we can have different groups where you just like, you know, maybe it's just a chat so you don't have to get on video. But if you're bound in your house, you'll have some time to get on video, whatever it is, where you sit down and we start really creating content over the next 2 weeks to spread. And if it's meant to be taken up and if it's helpful to people, it will go viral on its own. So think if you guys want to captain, like Divya, if you want to captain a kind of communication in light of social isolation, that group. Yeah, Danny, if you want to do reprogramming the narrative around it, or Nora, if you want to do something on herbals, or like whatever you guys want to captain, like yes. And whomever's watching this on replay, step up and like whatever gets you most excited, like let's start to create, you know, this counter wave. You know? So let's see. We will do now a pranayama practice. Yeah. So allow your eyes to close whenever you're ready. And before they do, I'm just going to show you, I'm going to demo a little bit that I will be referring to parts of the body. So you'll have your hands here below your rib cage at your waist, where on your fingers you can feel the belly. And then you'll have your fingers around the rib cage itself. So this is about bra line for women. And my thumb is behind my body. Yeah, Mom, I'd like you to do this too, please. And then the third will be up here on the chest and on the back of the back. Okay. So we'll start with closing the eyes, making sure that the jaws relax, there's space between the back teeth. And just noticing the breath, allowing the belly to fully come out as a Buddha breath. Buddha belly, big fat belly. And if you want your hands just on the belly, just a few breaths in and out. Making sure we're fully relaxed into the belly. A lot of people don't know how to breathe. A lot of people are paradoxically breathing, which means when they inhale, they suck their belly in rather than allow it to fully relax and come out. So that's the inhale. The belly should go outward, push out as the abdomen expands. On the exhale, the navel pulls in. And making sure you're doing that right, inviting the breath up a little bit more from the belly up through the chest. And now we're going to start that Durga Pranayama, the 3-part yogic breath. So starting with the hands below the ribs, allow the breath to come in first through that part, and then same inhale, hands move up to the rib cage. And then same inhale, lift the shoulders slightly. Through the shoulders up through the upper lungs, and then exhale, slowly, controlled, gently. So we're going to start to put counts to that now. Allow this to be a 1, 2, 3 through the belly. Inhale, same inhale, 3 more, 2, 3 through the ribs. Same inhale, lift the shoulders slightly, 2, 3, and then exhale for a count of at least 9, 8, 7, 6, taper the breath, 5, 4, 3, 2, squeeze the pelvic floor if you can, 1. Continue exhaling if there's anything left. You can take a little pause between inhale and exhale, and then start again. 3 to the belly, same inhale, 3 to the ribs, same inhale, 3, slight lift to the shoulders, no tension in the neck, jaw relaxed, exhale gently and slowly. And those of you who have a little more lung capacity, if and when you're ready, you can move to 4. So that's a 16 count inhale, 4 at each part, right? Or it would be a 12 count inhale. Maybe you hold for 4 then at the top. And then slowly, gently, 12 or 16 count exhale. And this is going to take time to build and strength, and all of you are in different levels of lung capacity and strength. So just be really honest. You should never during pranayama feel any tension. Your neck should be easy flowing. Your jaw should be easy flowing. Your shoulders shouldn't be held. You shouldn't be trying to hold past your capacity. You know, you can't go and just pick up a 20-kilo weight, right, if you haven't been able to lift a 10. And so really incrementally going, but you get the point of a 3-part yogic breath where it's belly, ribs wide, shoulders slightly lift, and you make it seamless. Then if you want to hold at the top, that's an up level or an advancement, which you don't need to do. Be really honest with yourself, because if you're lifting weights that are too strong for you, you're not going to strengthen the muscle. And then slowly, gently, like you're squeezing a tube of toothpaste from the bottom out, start to squeeze out and exhale the air, everything in and out through the nose. At the bottom, see what it feels like to be empty of air, even squeeze the ribs in. We talked a little bit about the intercostal muscles in our respiratory system lecture. These are also the auxiliary muscles of breath that we're using as we start to control the rib cage and the space as air comes into the body. So do 1 or 2 more rounds of this full 3-part yogic breath. And you can stand in a mirror and you should be able to see. Massive volume change. You start to incrementally build day by day, like start with 2 at each point, right? So it's just a 6-count inhale if that's where you are, or just try 2 to warm up, and then you can move to 3 in the later rounds, but effectively do about 10 rounds full inhale, exhale. Yeah. And then the second part of your practice can be some kind of expulsion breath. The common one is Kapalabhati, or skull shining breath, which you might know. It's a rapid exhalation followed by a passive inhalation. The navel goes in and up, all right? And so you've done this, I'm sure, in yoga class. It comes in and out through the nose. Squeeze the pelvic floor if you know what that means. And so the first round would be about 20, 25 if you're a beginner. Over time, you can bring that to 30 and then eventually to 60. If you've been practicing this several years, you can start to get up to 100 or 120. And yeah, in Bikram, they do it through the mouth. So our respiratory system is in and out through the nose, especially in times of virus. They are not the same. They, as soon as you breathe in and out of the mouth, it triggers the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or fight. And so we want to stay calm while doing this. So in and out through the nose. And you're using your abdomen here. Abdominal muscles are strong as we exhale. And allow for the cleansing to happen, right? And this is just kind of level 1 of a cleansing breath. What we've prepared for with our 3-part Durga Pranayama is Bastrika, which is my favorite of the breaths. I think I might have done this with you guys, but it's your hands go up all the way and you're going to be pulling them down so that your humerus, or the upper arm bone, literally like goes down and almost crushes impact the ribs in. All right. So to prepare for this, and also I'll tell you Kapalabhati, which we just did, is properly practiced by exhale fully, inhale fully, squeeze pelvic floor, exhale halfway, and begin. So that's the preparation to go into it. You go into it with half a breath in the lungs. And you'll notice that I do it much slower than a lot of people. That's because we're meant to have a calm nervous system. You'll see a lot of yoga teachers today going Kapalabhati, which is hyperventilation, completely antithetical to what we're doing here at the nervous system level and a level of strengthening the lungs. And so the more control that you have in pranayama, actually, the more strength you're creating in the respiratory tissues. So to bastrika, which means bellows breath, and a bellow in like the 1920s was a thing that looked like this, that would stoke a fire through creating an accordion-like effect and pushing out air. And so that's what we're doing here. And as you see, all of these are clearing for the respiratory tract. So a really good preparation or posture for this is actually sitting on your heels in Vajrasana or hero's pose with your lower legs tucked under you. Danny's demonstrating. And so you'll see that that changes the abdominal uprightness. And you can do that for the entire pranayama sequence of like 10 minutes or so, how long you're breathing. So for Bhastrika, the way that we prepare is exhaling fully, inhaling completely, exhaling fully, and we'll begin together. Squeeze pelvic floor. That's 10. Slowly exhale, relax. Let your system reset. And really, there's no need to go beyond 10. We can do 3 rounds of 10. All right. So exhale fully. Inhale. Exhale, squeeze pelvic floor. And begin. Return to normal breath. You'll notice that your normal breath is probably a little bit slower than it is normal. Maybe there's more retention in there. Observe the capacity of your lungs. And then if you want to just calm the nervous system, if you feel that you're exposed to any coronavirus plague, you can do some alternate nostril breathing. Remember, it's starting through an exhale, through left nostril, inhale. Close left, open right, exhale. Inhale there. Close right, you can either hold here or just go, exhale, left. Slowly inhale, left. And eventually your exhales will want to be twice as long as the inhales. So whatever ratio of counts that you're doing, you decide. And that can just bring you into a state of calm. If you want to finish off this whole sequence whenever you guys are ready in your morning routines or whatever, you can do Brahmari Pranayam, which will also help to reset some of the glands by virtue of vibration. And so Brahmari, or bee buzzing, the white hornet, is kind of looks like this. A ton of people do it differently. You can do whatever you want. But it would be closing the eyelids as well as the ear through the thumb and humming through the lips, exhaling fully, inhaling. Continue for as long as you want. You kind of package this in your own coronavirus pranayama prevention. I think, so if you take 10 minutes, maybe right when you wake up, have some water and practice your pranayama, especially after Bhastrika, especially if you're fasting, it might be super intense. So you might want to do a child's pose. Take it easy, meter yourself in terms of weight. and the lengths of the breath, and just begin to build a really strong respiratory system. And I mean, geez, guys, like, you can teach a class on that now, you know, if we're talking about resilient ways to make money. You have them, you're gaining them. Workshops are a really healthy way, especially early on in the development of your sharing of preventative health. Really, really good way to bring community together. And you can just start with, hey guys, I'm not an expert. I brought us all here together to have whatever. And like, even if that's an online workshop, you know, in the age that we're going into, and we can do TIFA branded webinars or whatever you guys want to do, where you can collaborate together and you guys can have the financial benefit of it. Yeah, so this is, in times of crisis, we innovate. And so here's to innovation, here's to all of you. And for anyone watching on the replay, I hope you've enjoyed. Yeah, and we can keep up in our chat with any questions that come. But I think we'll stop now because we've been on for an hour and 45. And I'm going to send you guys all a big hug. And thanks for coming together emergentarily. Yeah, hug yourself, right? Touch. That's going to be the one thing that loses out. So learn to touch yourself. Yeah. And I'll see you soon. Okay.